Greetings and welcome to the Mysteries of the Burrows, a Ted Stonewall mystery. Cozy up and prepare for the mystery of the broken lock.
30 sacks of grain in the storage room. I counted them twice already that evening, but counting settled my mind when the ledger numbers wouldn't balance. The mill wheel stood silent. Father had closed the sluice at sunset, and now the only sound was the bright water flowing past beneath us. That constant rush of water I'd known since before I could walk. Some nights it sounded like breathing. Tonight it sounded like whispers I couldn't quite make out. I sat at the office desk, oil lamp casting its yellow circle across the accounts. The numbers were wrong. 3 silver coins, 4 copper pennies. The discrepancy sat there in the column like a stone in flour, impossible to ignore. I'd traced it back through 6 entries already. Somewhere, someone had paid wrong, or I'd recorded wrong, and the error would gnaw at me until I found it. Father slept upstairs, his snoring faint through the floorboards. He'd check these books in the morning, and if the columns didn't balance, he'd say nothing. Just look at me with that flat disappointment that hurt worse than shouting ever could. I was working through the 7th entry when movement caught my eye through the window. A figure on the lane, running. Not the easy lope of a burrow folk heading home from the badger's den, nor the purposeful stride of someone with late business. This was hurried, furtive, the kind of movement that didn't want to be seen. I set down my pen. The figure passed through a patch of moonlight, and I caught details. Dark waistcoat, quality fabric. The particular way they moved, heel-heavy, planting each step flat instead of rolling through the foot like working folk did. Something wrapped in cloth tucked under one arm. Then the smell reached me, faint but distinct through the open window. Expensive pipe tobacco, not the rough-cut leaf farmers smoked, but the kind that cost silver, the kind Reginald Ledgerby kept in his office, the kind I'd smelled once when delivering flour to the lawyer's home. The figure glanced back once, checking the empty lane, and then disappeared around the bend toward the village centre. I stood at the window, watching the empty lane where they'd been. The tobacco smell faded on the night breeze. None of my business, probably nothing. Someone's private shame best left private. But that heel-heavy gait, the expensive tobacco, the wrapped bundle, the nervous backward glance. The ledger sat open on the desk. The numbers still didn't balance. I pulled on my jacket and stepped outside. The night air carried cut hay and wood smoke, and something else underneath. Damp earth from the garden beds, the green smell of growing things. Most of Burrowtown lay dark, sensible folk asleep in their beds. I followed the lane toward the village centre, staying in the shadows, more from habit than necessity. The figure had been heading this direction, and there weren't many places to go at this hour. The market square sat empty, stalls shuttered until morning. Beyond it stood the respectable buildings of Burrowtown's modest professional district. The post office, Fletcher Thornhill's station, 2 law offices facing each other across the square like duelists. Lawrence Quillwright's office, dark windows, red door with brass nameplate catching moonlight. I stopped in the shadow of the apothecary's awning, waited, let my eyes adjust. There, a faint glow moving behind the curtained window. Not the steady light of a lamp left burning, but something smaller, carried from place to place, moving slowly, methodically, like someone searching through files. I watched for 10 minutes. The light travelled from one side of the window to the other, paused at what I knew was Lawrence's document cabinet, moved again. Patient, unhurried, someone who knew what they were looking for. Then the light went out. Sudden darkness. A moment later the office door opened. The same figure emerged, I was certain. Same height, same quality waistcoat, same heel-heavy walk of someone unused to moving quietly. They pulled the door closed with exaggerated care, testing the handle twice, then hurried away into the darkness toward the east side of the village. I waited until they were gone, then crossed the square. The lock told a story. Fresh scratches around the keyhole, the brass still bright where metal had scraped metal. But these weren't the patient marks of a skilled thief. The scratches were aggressive, overlapping. Someone had tried to pick it with the wrong tools, failed, then forced it. I ran my finger along the latch mechanism. There, a distinct gouge where something thin and flat had been wedged in and levered hard. A letter opener, maybe, or a thin blade. The kind of damage someone with money and frustration would make. Not a professional, just desperate. I tried the handle, locked now. They'd managed to reset it when they left. For a long moment I stood there with my hand on the door. A responsible borough folk would wake Lawrence, report it to Fletcher Thornhill, let proper authorities handle it. But Fletcher would ask questions. Questions meant gossip. By morning, everyone in Boroughtown would know Lawrence Quillwright's office had been broken into. And the figure I'd seen, that quality waistcoat, that expensive tobacco, that heel-heavy gait of wealth, that wasn't some drifter or common thief. That was someone local, someone with money, someone who probably had good reasons to want this kept quiet. I knelt down, examining the ground beneath the window. The garden bed there was soft, recently watered. Someone had stood here. The soil was compressed, plants crushed. And caught on a low branch of the hedge, a thread. Dark fabric, expensive weave. The kind wealthy folk wore, not the rough homespun of working borough folk. I carefully pulled the thread free and pocketed it. The compressed soil showed the pattern of someone standing, shifting weight. Heel heavy again, deeper impressions where heels had pressed, lighter where toes barely touched. The stance of wealth, standing flat because there was no need for stealth or careful movement. I filed the details away and went back to the mill. The ledger still sat open, numbers still wrong. I worked on it until I found the error, a transposed figure in the fourth entry, my handwriting, my mistake. And then I sat there in the lamplight, thinking about the scratched lock and the searching candle and the figure who smelled of expensive tobacco. I'd find out who it was, that much I knew. What I'd do with that knowledge, that was a different question. Morning came grey and damp, mist rising from the bright water like breath. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, caught between dreams of running figures and columns of numbers that wouldn't balance. I was hauling the first sack of the day when footsteps hammered across the wooden bridge. Lawrence Quillwright stood in the mill doorway, breathing hard. His waistcoat was buttoned wrong, third button in the second hole, and his normally precise hair stood up at angles that would have embarrassed him if he'd noticed. His hands trembled slightly, though he clasped them together to hide it.
Mr. Stonewall, I need to speak with you, privately.
I set down the sack, wiped flour dust on my trousers.
Come in.
The mill office was small. Desk, 2 chairs, shelves of ledgers tracking every grain of wheat that passed through our stones. It smelled like work, flour dust and old paper, and the iron tang of machinery. Lawrence sat without being asked, then realized he'd been rude and started to rise. I waved him back down. What happened?
What makes you think something happened?
You're here. Your waistcoat's buttoned wrong. And you look like stress this morning.
He glanced down at the buttons, grimaced, but didn't fix them.
My office was broken into last night.
I kept my face neutral.
Broken into?
The lock was forced. Someone went through my files. But here's the strange part. Nothing was stolen.
Nothing.
I keep petty cash in the safe. Some silver coins and pennies for small transactions. Untouched. My father's pocket watch on the desk. Silver, worth a good deal. Still there. The candlesticks on the mantel. Everything of value still in place.
What was disturbed?
My document files. Property deeds, contracts, wills. Someone went through them carefully. Put most things back, but not quite right. I organized by date and family name. Whoever searched them tried to maintain the order, but got the sequence slightly wrong.
I thought about the searching candle, the methodical movement from one side of the window to the other.
You're certain it was last night?
I locked the office myself at 8. Checked the files before I left. Habit of mine, making sure everything's in order. This morning, I found the lock forced and the files disturbed.
Have you reported it to Fletcher Thornhill?
He shook his head quickly.
Number. And I don't intend to.
A break-in should go to the constables.
The constables ask questions. Questions create gossip. By this afternoon, every borough folk from here to Greendale would know my office was compromised. My clients trust me with sensitive information, Mr. Stonewall. Wills, property disputes, family secrets. If word spreads that my security can be breached...
He didn't need to finish. Reputation was currency in the Burrows, and Lawrence had built his practice on discretion,
Why come to me?
though I already knew.
I've heard things. How you found Walter Hayward's ram before Harvest Fair. How you seemed to stop those anonymous letters.
He pulled a leather purse from his pocket, set it on my desk. It landed with the solid weight of silver.
I'll pay well. 15 silver coins now, 15 more when you find who did this and what they were looking for.
30 silver coins, more than I made in a month at the mill, more than I'd ever been paid for anything. I picked up the purse, felt its weight. 15 coins exactly, I could tell without counting, the same way I could tell a short sack of grain by how it settled in my hands.
I'll need to examine your office.
Of course. When?
Now.
Lawrence Quillwright's law office occupied the ground floor of a well-built home on the edge of the village square. Respectable address, solid construction, the kind of building that announced its owner had money and wanted you to know it. Inside, everything spoke of careful order. Shelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound ledgers and rolled documents tied with ribbon. A large desk dominated the center, inkwell, pen stand, blotter, oil lamp positioned at the exact corner where 2 seams in the desk wood met. Except the lamp wasn't at the corner anymore. I walked straight to it, knelt down, examining the base. A faint ring in the dust showed where it usually sat, right at the seam intersection, a natural marker. Now it sat 3/4 of an inch off that line.
You move this?
No. That's what I mean. Small things, out of place. I keep it exactly there for the best light. Found it moved this morning.
Someone lifted it. Checking underneath, probably.
I stood, looking at the desk surface. No papers there. Lawrence was too careful for that.
What's usually under the lamp?
Nothing. Just desk surface.
But someone had checked anyway. Thorough. I moved to the document cabinet against the far wall. 6 drawers, brass handles, solid oak construction. Lawrence pulled open the middle drawer.
The property deeds. Someone went through them extensively, alphabetically by family name, then chronologically within each family. This morning, I found the Brightwater deeds mixed with the Bagwell ones. The Red Hill contracts were out of order.
I knelt beside the cabinet. The documents inside were old parchment. Some of them, careful handwriting in iron gall ink faded to brown. Others were newer, crisp paper, darker ink, all official, all important. Which section was most disturbed? Lawrence hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but I noticed.
The Bagwell family deeds. Specifically, Bagwell Manor property.
Wilton Bagwell's estate, the grandest home in the Burrows, full of mysteries and old money and rumours that never quite resolved into facts. I examined the floor near the cabinet. Faint disturbance in the dust. Someone had knelt here, going through the lower drawers. Smudges where knees had pressed. And there, on the bottom shelf, a smear of something dark. I touched it carefully, brought my finger to my nose. Charcoal.
Someone was making rubbings. Copying your documents without taking them.
Lawrence's face went pale. I continued searching, and there, wedged under the cabinet's base, almost invisible unless you were looking at floor level, a small piece of paper. I pulled it out carefully. Cheap paper, the kind used for notes, not official documents. Someone had written in cramped, hurried handwriting. Section 4, Clause 7, Boundary Dispute Resolution. The letters were small, pinched together, with a particular way of crossing the T, a rightward slope that seemed almost aggressive. Each T tilted the same way, like the writer was always leaning into the next word. I filed the detail away.
Recognize the handwriting?
He squinted at it.
No, it's not mine.
I pocketed the paper.
The lock, next.
Outside, I knelt by the door and studied the mechanism. Standard Burrowtown lock, good quality, but not meant to stop a determined intruder. The scratches told the story clearly now in daylight. Multiple attempts with something too thick, the gouges overlapped, frantic. Then the decisive mark, a deep score where something thin and flat had been wedged beside the latch and levered hard enough to force the mechanism.
Not a professional. Someone who didn't know how to pick a lock properly. They tried, failed, then forced it out of frustration.
So, not a thief?
Not someone who makes their living at it.
I stood, brushing dirt from my knees.
Someone desperate enough to break in, but careful enough to try picking first. Someone who brought their own light source so they wouldn't be seen. Anything else unusual? Anything out of place? He thought.
There were candle wax drippings near the cabinet. I don't keep candles there. I use the oil lamp.
Back inside, I found the wax drippings. Still slightly soft when I pressed them. Made last night. The intruder had brought their own light source. Didn't want to use Lawrence's lamp, which might be visible from outside. I opened the waste bin under Lawrence's desk. Empty except for another single sheet of crumpled paper. I smoothed it out. Charcoal rubbings. The kind you'd make by placing paper over text and rubbing to create an impression. The words were fragmentary, but readable. Property boundaries, eastern border, stone markers, Bagwell Manor.
What is that?
Someone was copying your documents, making impressions rather than taking them.
I looked at him.
They didn't steal the deeds because they didn't need to. They just needed to read them, study them.
Lawrence's face went from pale to grey.
Who would?
That's what you're paying me to find out.
The Badger's den smelled like old ale and pipe smoke, and the accumulated conversations of generations. Mid-morning on a workday, the place was mostly empty. A pair of old-timers playing cards in the corner, the quiet rhythm of village life continuing regardless. Oswald Kettlewell stood behind the bar, polishing a glass with a cloth that had seen better decades. He was a large borough folk, red-faced and jovial, with the kind of permanent smile that came from a lifetime of listening to other people's problems while serving them drinks.
Ted Stonewall. He set down the glass. Early for ale.
Just questions today, and a breakfast of eggs and sausage.
His eyes sharpened behind the smile.
Questions about what?
Anyone unusual in town yesterday? Strangers passing through?
His smile didn't waver, but something shifted behind it.
Heard about Lawrence's office, did you?
So much for discretion.
How did you hear?
His clerk, young Wilco Downing, came in this morning looking shaken. Said the office had been disturbed. Wouldn't say more. He shrugged. Nothing stays secret in the Burrows, Ted. You know that.
The stranger?
Right, yes. There was a travelling peddler. Middle-aged, travel-worn clothes, carrying a pack of goods. Came in yesterday afternoon asking about the market.
What time?
Around 3. Had an ale. Asked about selling tinware and thread. Told him market day's high day, not yesterday. He thanked me and left.
Anything else?
Widow Agnes Thatcher was in here earlier, swearing she saw a stranger near Lawrence's office around dinner time. Said he looked suspicious.
His tone made clear what he thought of Agnes's suspicions. Too convenient. An outsider in town the same night as a break-in.
Is he still around?
Camped outside town, past Aldrich Fieldstone's place. Saw his fire smoke this morning. He leaned on the bar. Ted, careful with this. Lawrence Quillwright's a powerful borough folk. Powerful folk have complicated problems.
I paid for my breakfast.
It's just a break-in.
Nothing's ever just anything. You're learning that.
The peddler's camp sat in a clearing off the east road, sheltered by a stand of oaks. But before I got there, I saw Fletcher Thornhill's wagon pulled to the side of the road. Fletcher stood with the peddler, who had his hands clasped in front of him. Not bound, but the posture of someone who'd been in this situation before and knew how to look non-threatening. The peddler's pack lay open on the ground, contents spread out for inspection.
Mr. Stonewall.
His voice was flat, professional. His hand rested on his belt near where his badge hung.
Hear about the break-in?
Checking alibis.
So am I. He gestured at the peddler. This gentleman claims he was at Fieldstone's farm yesterday evening. You planning to verify that?
The peddler's eyes met mine. Tired, resigned. Already convicted in Fletcher's mind. Maybe in his own. I'd seen that look before. On the faces of men who knew that being in the wrong place at the wrong time was enough, regardless of actual guilt.
I was going to.
Save you the trip. I already checked with Aldrich Fieldstone. The story holds. Dinner from 6 to 9. Multiple witnesses. His jaw tightened. So I came out here for nothing.
Someone broke into Lawrence Quillwright's office. Forced the lock. Searched his files. That takes planning. knowledge of the building layout, familiarity with what's kept where.
The peddler looked up and said under his breath,
And strangers are always the first suspects. Not angry, just stating fact.
Fletcher flushed but didn't argue. I pulled out the note I'd found under Lawrence's cabinet.
The person who broke in left this. Local handwriting. Someone familiar with legal documents and property terminology. Section 4, Clause 7. That's not how a stranger would phrase it.
He studied the paper. His expression shifted, recognition that he'd been heading down the wrong path.
You're saying it wasn't him?
I'm saying it couldn't have been him. He doesn't know Burrowtown well enough to navigate at night. Doesn't have access to legal files to know what to look for. Wrong kind of crime.
I paused.
This wasn't theft. It was research.
The peddler exhaled slowly. Relief and bitterness mixed together. Fletcher looked between us for a long moment, then nodded once.
Get your things together. Move your camp down the road a ways, past the boundary markers.
I haven't done anything.
I know, that's why I'm not detaining you. His voice softened slightly. But staying here just makes you a target for every theft between now and next market day. I can't protect you if folks are convinced you're guilty. Move on toward Greendale. Better market there anyway.
The peddler began packing his tent, movements practiced and weary. This wasn't his first time being asked to leave. I watched Fletcher walk back to his wagon, back straight, righteous in his certainty despite being wrong. He'd almost arrested an innocent man because it was easier than investigating properly, because outsiders were always the convenient answer, and Fletcher was supposed to be the good one. Competent, by the book, fair. If even good constables jumped to the easy answer, what did that say about Burrows' justice? The peddler finished packing, looked at me.
Thank you for checking the facts.
Just doing what needed doing.
Most don't bother. People always suspect the outsider. Same in every village. Something goes wrong, blame the stranger. Easier than looking at your own.
He wasn't wrong. He shouldered his pack, getting ready to leave. I walked back toward Burrowtown, thinking about convenience and assumptions and how easy it was to see guilt where you expected to find it. The post office smelled of paper and sealing wax and the particular mustiness of letters that had travelled long distances. Violet Weedwhisker stood behind her counter sorting mail, her quick fingers directing each letter to its proper slot without needing to look.
Ted Stonewall.
She didn't pause her sorting.
Not often you come by. No mail for you today.
Not here for mail.
I leaned on the counter.
I'm asking about yesterday. Who you saw near Lawrence Quillwright's office.
Her eyes flicked to me, then back to her work, sharp, calculating.
Asking for yourself or for Lawrence?
Nothing stayed secret in the Burrows.
Does it matter?
Might.
She set down a letter, gave me her full attention.
Lawrence is a client of this post office. Professional relationship. I don't gossip about my clients.
I'm not asking you to gossip. Just tell me what you saw. Facts.
She studied me for a moment, then nodded slightly, some calculation I couldn't read.
Saw the peddler around 4. Asked me for directions to the market. Polite enough.
Anyone else? Anyone local?
She resumed her sorting, but slower now, considering her words.
Mortimer Redhill went past around dinner time. Maybe 8:30. Heading toward the village centre.
Mortimer Redhill. I knew the name. Everyone did. Married to Cordelia, one of the sharpest-tongued women in the Burrows. Wealthy. Always scheming about something.
He was carrying something wrapped in cloth. Thought it was odd. He usually sends servants for errands.
Did he seem rushed? Nervous?
Purposeful. Like he had somewhere specific to be. She slid another letter into its slot. And he wasn't at the Badger's Den last night. First time in weeks I was there and did not see him. Mortimer is usually there every evening, drinking and complaining all the time.
A broken routine. That meant something.
Anything else?
Just that Lawrence would be wise to check who's been asking questions about Bagwell Manor lately.
She met my eyes. Been a lot of interest in that property. More than usual.
From who?
You're the detective. Detect.
But her expression said I already knew the answer. I turned to leave.
Ted,
Her voice stopped me.
whatever you're digging into, be careful. The Red Hills have long memories and sharp tongues. Cordelia especially. She doesn't forget slights, and she considers a lot of things slights.
Everyone kept telling me to be careful. Maybe I should start listening. I spent the afternoon in the market square, not buying anything, just watching. The rhythm of Burrowtown flowing around me, housewives examining vegetables, farmers selling produce, the ordinary business of ordinary lives. Mortimer Redhill appeared around 3, walking with his wife Cordelia. He was portly, well dressed in an expensive waistcoat, with the perpetual expression of someone who felt the world owed him more than it had delivered. She was sharp-featured, elegant in the way of old money, with eyes that assessed everything like she was calculating its worth down to the last copper. I watched from the shadow of a fruit store, staying out of direct line of sight. They moved through the market like current around stones. Other borough folk stepped aside for them. Not out of respect, exactly. Out of wariness. The Red Hills had money and influence, and a reputation for making enemies of anyone who crossed them. Mortimer stopped at the vegetable stall, examining carrots with exaggerated care. And there, I saw what I'd come to see. His hands. Fresh ink stains on 3 fingers of his right hand. Not the faded kind that never quite wash out, but fresh stains, dark and obvious. And on his right cuff, a smudge of charcoal dust. The kind of stains you'd get from extensive writing, or copying documents with charcoal rubbings. Mortimer's hands were smooth otherwise. No calluses, no scars from work. Wealthy folk employed clerks and scribes for writing. They didn't do that kind of work themselves, unless they had to, unless they couldn't trust anyone else with what they were doing. I filed the observation away and kept watching. Cordelia was talking to the vegetable seller, her voice carrying.
And if Wilton Bagwell thinks he can simply ignore legitimate claims to property, he's mistaken. There are laws. There are rights.
The seller nodded nervously, probably wishing they'd talk about vegetables instead of property disputes. I watched how Mortimer stood, weight back on his heels, feet planted flat. The stance of someone who'd never needed to move quietly or carefully. Who'd never done physical work that taught you to walk on your toes, distribute your weight efficiently. The stance that matched the compressed soil in Lawrence's garden bed, and caught on Mortimer's waistcoat, nearly invisible unless you were looking, a thread of dark fabric. The same expensive weave as the thread I'd found on the hedge branch. Everything was clicking into place, like mill gears finding their teeth. That evening, I returned to Lawrence's office. He let me in immediately, looking even more haggard than that morning, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed.
Any progress?
Some. Tell me about Mortimer Redhill and Bagwell Manor.
Lawrence's face went carefully blank, the expression of a lawyer who'd just been asked about a client's secrets. He walked to his desk, sat down heavily.
What about them?
His interest in the property. His claims.
A long pause. Lawrence looked at the papers on his desk, deeds, contracts, the careful records of who owned what.
The law is words on paper, Ted. But the Burrows is built on family. When those 2 things conflict...
He didn't finish.
Tell me anyway.
He sighed.
It's no secret, at least not among certain circles. Mortimer believes he should have inherited Bagwell Manor instead of Wilton Bagwell. There's a distant family connection through his wife. Cordelia's grandmother was a Bagwell, second cousin to Wilton's father, or something equally remote. Mortimer's convinced that gives him a stronger claim than Wilton's direct line.
Does it?
No, the property is clearly Wilton's. The deed goes back 4 generations, unbroken succession. But Mortimer is...
He searched for the word.
Obsessed. He sees it as a personal slight that the property didn't come to his wife's line.
He's consulted you about it?
Multiple times. Wanted me to find loopholes in the deed. Legal technicalities that might support a claim.
His jaw tightened. I refused.
The ownership is legitimate, beyond question. Besides, even if there were grounds for dispute, which there aren't, I wouldn't help him contest it. The man's obsession is
He shook his head.
Obsessed enough to break into your office to study the deed himself?
Lawrence stared at me.
You think Mortimer?
I laid the note on his desk.
Recognize this handwriting?
He picked it up, studied it carefully. His face changed. Recognition, then something more complicated. Dismay, maybe, or resignation.
It could be Mortimer's. He's written to me before, pestering me about Bagwell Manor. The handwriting is similar. That cramped style, the way he crosses his T's, always leaning forward, like he's in a hurry.
Where was Mortimer last night?
I don't know. I don't keep track of the Red Hills movements.
He rubbed his face.
If it is Mortimer, that's family, Ted. Distant, yes. Cordelia is my second cousin through the Quillwright line. But still, we don't accuse each other of crimes.
Even when they commit them?
Especially then.
I understood. In the Burrows, family meant something. Sometimes more than it should.
I need a sample of Mortimer's handwriting. Something recent for comparison. Something he wrote naturally, without being careful.
He went to his files, extracted a letter.
From 3 months ago. Another inquiry about Bagwell Manor. Polite on the surface, but you can hear the obsession underneath.
I compared the two documents side by side. The letter was formal, careful penmanship, the kind you used for official correspondence. The note was hurried, scrawled quickly while searching files by candlelight. But the underlying hand was the same, the cramped spacing, letters bunched together like they were fighting for room. The rightward slope on every T, aggressive and consistent. The particular way he formed his G's, the loop too tight, almost pinched closed. Same writer, no question.
I need him to write something without knowing it's a test. Something casual where he won't be careful about his handwriting.
Lawrence looked at me like I'd suggested something dangerous, which, in the Burrows, I probably had. The next morning, I positioned myself near the market square, where I'd learnt Mortimer took his daily constitutional. The term made me want to laugh. Wealthy folk and their constitutionals, as if walking was some kind of medical treatment, instead of just moving from one place to another. He appeared right on schedule. Expensive waistcoat, perpetual frown, walking alone. Cordelia wasn't with him this morning, which was what I'd hoped for. She was sharp enough to see through what I was planning. I timed my approach carefully, intercepting him near the baker's stall. I fumbled with a piece of paper, making sure he could see my confusion.
Mr. Redhill, forgive me, but I have this delivery notice. Someone wrote Bagwell Manor, but the spelling looks wrong.
I held out the paper where I'd deliberately written Bagwell Manor with an E and not an O.
I need to deliver flour there next week, and I don't want to embarrass myself by getting it wrong.
Mortimer's eyes fixed on the paper immediately. His face tightened, the expression of someone who'd spotted an error that personally offended him.
That's not how you spell it. It's manor. M-A-N-O-R. Manor. Any educated person would know that.
Could you write it correctly, so I have it right? I held out my pencil, looking apologetic.
I wouldn't want to deliver to the wrong place.
He snatched the pencil and paper with obvious irritation, wrote Bagwell Manor in large, aggressive letters, pressing hard enough that the lead nearly broke, as if teaching a child. Added underneath, the Bagwell family estate, West Lane. He shoved the paper back at me.
There. Try not to make such fundamental errors in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Redhill. Most helpful.
He walked off, muttering about incompetent tradespeople who couldn't even spell properly. I looked at the paper. His handwriting, done quickly, irritated, without thought or care. The same cramped style. The same rightward sloping T's, every single one. The same tight loops on the G's, pinched nearly closed. Even done rapidly, his hand formed letters the same way. A perfect match to the note I'd found under Lawrence's cabinet. My hands were steady as I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. My heart was not. I had my proof. Now I had to decide what to do with it. That evening, I laid everything out for Lawrence in his office. The lamp burned low between us, casting shadows that made the room feel smaller than it was.
The handwriting matches.
I placed 3 documents side by side. The note from under the cabinet, the old letter from Lawrence's files, the Bagwell Manor correction Mortimer had written that morning.
Same writer, same hand. Look at the T's. Every one slopes right, same angle. The G's pinched at the top. The overall compression, like he's fighting for space on the paper.
Lawrence stared at the papers like they might transform into something else if he looked long enough.
Mortimer was seen near your office yesterday evening, carrying something wrapped in cloth. Probably a candle and paper for making impressions. He wasn't at the Badger's Den last night, which breaks his routine. He has fresh ink stains on his hands and charcoal on his cuff, from extensive copying and rubbing.
I paused, letting him process.
The lock was forced by someone who didn't know how to pick it properly. Multiple failed attempts, then levering it open out of frustration. Not a professional. Someone desperate and obsessed who brought the wrong tools.
I tapped the documents.
The fabric thread I found on the hedge matches the weave of Mortimer's waistcoat. The standing pattern in your garden bed matches how Mortimer stands. Heel heavy, flat-footed. Everything points to him.
He sat heavily, his careful lawyer's composure cracking.
It's him.
Yes.
The question came out smaller than he probably meant it to.
What do I do?
That's your decision. I can present this to Fletcher Thornhill, have Mortimer questioned officially.
Number.
The word came, sharp, immediate.
No constables. No public accusations.
He broke the law.
His voice cracked slightly.
He's family. Distant. Through marriage. But the Quillwrights don't drag each other before the constables. It's not done.
I felt something cold settle in my chest, like a bearing grinding against a brake, metal on metal. Wrong.
If it had been the peddler, or some farmer from Greendale, or anyone without family connections, you'd have pressed charges.
Lawrence didn't answer, didn't need to.
Same crime, same evidence, same break-in, same violation of trust, different consequence. Because of his name.
That's how the Burrows works, Ted.
That doesn't make it right.
Number.
He met my eyes, finally.
But it makes it practical. The Quillwrights and Redhills have been intertwined for generations. Business dealings, marriages, shared investments. If I accuse Mortimer publicly, it becomes a scandal. Our families fighting in front of the entire town. It damages everyone. My practice, their reputation, all the connections between us.
He pulled out another purse, counted 15 silver coins onto the desk with careful precision. 30 total now. More than I'd make in 6 weeks at the mill. I looked at the coins. Each one caught the lamplight, throwing tiny reflections.
I want you here tomorrow morning, when I confront Mortimer. I want a witness to what I tell him. And I want him to know that you figured this out. That his precious cleverness wasn't clever enough.
Why?
Because he needs to understand that actions have consequences, even if those consequences aren't public.
His face hardened, something cold and final in his expression.
And I want him to know that if he tries this again, family won't protect him. Next time I go to Fletcher.
I picked up the coins, let them run through my fingers back onto the desk, counting. 15 exactly, 30 total. The weight of compromise in silver.
I'll be here.
Morning. Lawrence's office. The air felt thick, like before a storm. Mortimer Redhill arrived at 9 o'clock exactly, punctual in the way of men who consider their time valuable. He saw me standing in the corner and frowned.
What's he doing here?
Sit down, Mortimer.
I don't take orders in...
Sit down.
Something in Lawrence's voice, cold and absolute, made Mortimer obey. He sat in the chair across from Lawrence's desk, eyes darting between us, calculating. Lawrence laid out 3 pieces of paper, the note from under the cabinet, the letter from his files, the Bagwell manner correction Mortimer had written for me, all lined up in a row like evidence in a trial.
I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to answer it honestly. Did you break into my office 2 nights ago?
His face went red.
How How dare you accuse?
Did you break into my office?
The silence stretched. Mortimer looked at the papers, at me, back at Lawrence. His face cycled through expressions: outrage, calculation, fear, defiance.
I needed to see the deed.
The words came out defensive, almost petulant.
You refuse to help me. Refuse to even look for loopholes or technicalities. I have a right to know what's in those documents. Bagwell Manor should be Cordelia's by blood right, by inheritance. The property should have...
By nothing. Bagwell Manor is Wilton Bagwell's. Legally, absolutely, completely, without any question whatsoever. There are no loopholes, no technicalities, no clever arguments that will change 4 generations of clear succession.
He leaned forward.
You broke into my office, violated my trust, forced my lock, searched my private files, copied my documents, broke the law, for nothing.
I have a right.
You have nothing. And now you're a criminal, a thief, a housebreaker. If any other borough folk had done this, any farmer, any tradesman, any stranger passing through, I'd have dragged them to Fletcher Thornhill myself and pressed charges immediately.
Mortimer's face went from red to purple.
You wouldn't dare.
But your family, distant, barely connected through Cordelia's line, but still family.
His hands were flat on his desk, fingers spread wide.
So I'm giving you a choice. You never speak of this. You never come near my office again. You stop this obsession with Bagwell Manor. You stop writing me letters. Stop asking questions. Stop scheming about claims you don't have. And I don't press charges.
The words came out before I could stop them.
You're letting him go?
He glanced at me, something apologetic in his expression, but firm.
Family matters, Ted.
Mortimer stood, shaking with rage. He looked at me with pure hatred, the kind of look that said I'd made an enemy for life.
You, a miller, playing a sleuth. You think you're clever, figuring this out?
I think I'm observant.
You've humiliated me. Made me look like a common thief in front of Lawrence. Made me grovel. I won't forget this.
You are a common thief. The only difference is your last name. Any other borough folk would be sitting in Fletcher Thornhill's jail right now.
Mortimer's hands curled into fists. Lawrence moved between us.
Leave, Mortimer. Now. Before I change my mind about the constables.
Mortimer pushed past us, slamming the door hard enough to shake dust from the rafters. The sound echoed in the small office, then faded into silence. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking older, smaller.
That could have gone better.
You're really not pressing charges?
No.
If it had been Chester Silverbrook who forced that lock...
Chester isn't family.
He looked up at me.
I'm not proud of this, Ted. But this is how it works. How it's always worked. Family protects family, even when they're wrong. Especially when they're wrong.
I understood then, in a way I hadn't before. The boroughs had 2 systems of justice running parallel. One for common folk, swift, public, unforgiving. Another for the families with money and names and connections, private, quiet, forgiving.
You did good work. You found the truth. That's what I hired you for, and you delivered.
I wasn't sure I agreed, but I'd taken his money, done his job, found his truth. What he did with it after, that wasn't my responsibility. That's what I told myself anyway. I didn't make it back to the mill before Cordelia Redhill found me. She stepped out from behind the hedge on North Lane like she'd been waiting, hunting. Her face was tight with fury, eyes sharp as broken glass. The morning sun caught her jewellery, expensive, tasteful, the kind that announced wealth without shouting.
You, Mr. Stonewall.
I stopped, waited.
My husband told me what happened. What you accused him of.
I didn't accuse. I found evidence.
You humiliated him, made him look like a criminal in front of Lawrence Quillwright, made him grovel and beg not to be reported. He was pursuing what's rightfully ours, what my grandmother should have inherited. Bagwell Manor belongs to my line by blood and right. Wilton Bagwell is a thief, hoarding property that should have...
Wilton Bagwell owns Bagwell Manor legally. The deed is clear. 4 generations of unbroken succession. Your husband broke into a lawyer's office, forced a lock, stole information. There's no other word for it. That's a crime.
She stepped closer, examined me, really looked, the way someone assesses livestock at market. Her gaze travelled over my flour-dusted jacket, my rough work shirt, the calluses visible on my hands.
You think you've accomplished something, solved a puzzle, made yourself important, Cordelia. Shecks, but you're just a miller who looked through a keyhole. That's all you'll ever be.
She leaned closer, voice dropping.
The Red Hills have been important in the Burrows for 6 generations. We're remembered. We matter. But you?
She glanced at the mill behind me.
Mills are everywhere. Millers are everywhere. When the Stonewall mill stops turning, someone else's wheel will grind the grain, and no one will remember there was ever a Ted Stonewall who thought he was clever.
She straightened.
Keep looking through keyholes, Mr. Stonewall. Keep solving your little mysteries for silver pennies, but understand you're solving them because we allow it. The moment you become inconvenient, you'll find that mills can stop turning, and the Burrows won't even notice you're gone.
She swept past me, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and something colder, the certainty that she'd spoken truth, not threat. I stood there watching her go, feeling something cold and heavy settle in my chest, like a millstone grinding against nothing but air. All that force with nowhere productive to go. I'd done my job, found the truth, got paid, and made powerful enemies in the process. Cordelia's words echoed. No one will remember there was ever a Ted Stonewall. I walked back to the mill slowly, thinking about threats and consequences, and the weight of silver in my pocket. The bright water flowed past, indifferent to human concerns. The wheel stood silent, waiting for Father to open the sluice. Everything looked the same as it had yesterday, but felt different, like the alignment had shifted somehow, gears that used to mesh cleanly now catching on each other. Father was in the storage room when I arrived, counting sacks. 32, same as always.
You were gone.
Not an accusation, just observation.
Had business in town, for Lawrence Quillwright.
He nodded once, didn't ask details. As long as the mill ran, the rest didn't concern him.
The bearing's been catching. Getting worse. Needs replacing soon.
I thought about the 15 coins still in my pocket. 30 total now, locked in the strongbox upstairs.
I can pay for it. The new bearing.
Father looked at me. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes, then disappeared.
Good.
That was all. No questions about where the money came from, no praise, just good. The mill could be fixed, and that's what mattered. I climbed to the office, unlocked the strongbox, added my 15 coins to the 15 already there. 30 silver coins, sitting heavy in their container. More than I'd ever saved at once. Dirty money, maybe. Payment for helping powerful Burrow folk avoid justice. But also practical money. Real money that would fix a real problem. I closed the strongbox and locked it, stood there for a moment, hands on the lid, feeling the weight of what I'd learned about the Burrows and myself. That evening, Fletcher Thornhill stopped by the mill. He leaned against the doorframe, not quite entering, the posture of someone with something to say but unsure how to start. Young for a constable, earnest, with the kind of dedication that hadn't been beaten out of him yet.
Ted, got a minute?
I set down the grain sack I'd been moving.
What is it?
Heard something about Lawrence Quillwright's situation. The break-in.
I kept my face neutral.
Don't know what you mean.
Come on. Everyone knows you investigated. Everyone knows you found who did it. Word is it was Mortimer Redhill.
Who told you that?
Does it matter? The whole village is talking about it. How Mortimer broke into Lawrence's office, how you proved it, how Lawrence isn't pressing charges because they're family. Everyone except the constables, apparently, because no one bothered to make an official report.
Lawrence didn't want it reported. Family business.
I know. That's what bothers me. He looked at his hands, work roughened, scarred across the knuckles from a fight last year.
You know what I do every morning? Scrub my hands. Flour dust washes off easy, Ted. This job? Grease. It stains, gets under your nails, in the creases. You don't notice it building up until everything you touch looks dirty.
He met my eyes.
First time I let someone go because of their name, I told myself it was practical. One compromise. Small thing. But that grease, it doesn't wash off. It builds up. And eventually you stop trying to scrub it away because you can't remember what clean hands felt like.
He pushed off the doorframe.
You just got grease on your hands, Ted. Question is, are you going to scrub them clean? Or are you going to tell yourself it doesn't show? I had a case once, 3 years back. The mayor's son, Horace Elderberry's boy, was stealing from the market fund. Had proof. Witness testimony, records, everything airtight. Mayor asked me not to press charges. Family business, he said. The boy would pay it back quietly. No scandal, no public shame. And he did pay it back. Every copper. But 6 months later, he did it again. Stole more. And this time, when I caught him, he looked me in the eye and said, "You'll let this go, same as before." Like I'd taught him that stealing was fine as long as you had the right name.
He looked at me hard.
That's when I understood. The first compromise teaches them they can do it again. And it teaches you that your job isn't justice. It's protecting them from consequences.
He started down the path, then stopped.
You just taught Mortimer Redhill the same lesson. That he can break the law and walk free because of his name. Question is, what are you going to do next time, when he does something worse, because you showed him there are no real consequences?
He left before I could respond. I stood there in the mill doorway, his words sitting heavy in my chest like unground grain. Substance without processing, weight without purpose. The grease doesn't wash off. 3 days passed. Grain grinding, customers coming through. The ordinary work of ordinary life. But things had changed. Small things. The way Burrow folk looked at me. Some with respect, he solved the Quillwright case. Some with wariness, he made enemies of the Redhills. Some with a knowing look that said, "Welcome to how things really work." I'd proven I could solve mysteries the constables couldn't. Or wouldn't. Word was spreading. A few more Burrow folk had approached me with problems. Small things, mostly. Missing items, family disputes, questions that needed answers but didn't need official reports. Work. Paid work. I was becoming something. Not quite a detective, not quite a constable. Something else. Something the Burrows seemed to need, but didn't have a name for yet. Someone who found truth for people who could afford to pay for it. That evening I sat alone in the mill office, the lamp burning low. I pulled out the purse, let the coins spill across the desk. 30 silver coins. I counted them twice, once by stacking, once by touch. The metal felt cold, slick somehow, like they'd been handled too much, or not enough. I arranged them in rows, 3 rows of 10. Perfect, precise. The way Father taught me to count everything. The lamplight caught each coin, throwing tiny reflections that danced when my hand trembled. I steadied it, counted again. 30. Always 30. The coins clinked when I scooped them back into the purse. A sound that should have been satisfying. Wasn't. I put the purse in the strongbox, locked it, put the key in my pocket. Tomorrow I'd call the millwright, order the new bearing, fix what needed fixing. The millwright arrived the next morning, a young fellow from Greendale with good hands and better reputation. I'd sent word the day before about the bearing. Father watched from the doorway as the young man examined the wheel mechanism.
It's worn through. Surprised it hasn't seized yet. You've been lucky.
How much to fix it?
15 silver coins for the new bearing.
5 for labour. 20 total. 20. I had 30 in the strong box.
Do it.
By midday, the old bearing was out, scored and damaged, bits of metal shaved off from the constant grinding. The young millwright showed it to father, who nodded grimly. Could have failed completely any day. Could have damaged the entire wheel mechanism, cost 10 times as much to repair. By evening, the new bearing was in. The millwright opened the sluice, let water flow. The wheel began to turn. Smooth, perfect, no grinding, no catching, just clean, efficient rotation. Father stood by the wheel, listening to it turn. He put his hand on the wood, feeling the vibration. His face showed nothing, but he nodded once.
Good.
That was all. Approval, in his way. The millwright packed his tools. I paid him 20 silver coins from the strongbox, counted them out carefully, placed them in his hand. He thanked me, said the mill would run better now, said to send word if I needed anything else. After he left, I stood there in the late afternoon light, listening to machinery work the way it was meant to. The new bearing was perfect. No grinding, no resistance, just smooth rotation. Efficient. Clean. I picked up the old bearing from where the millwright had left it. The metal was scored, damaged, years of friction wearing it down grain by grain until it failed. Cold in my hand despite the warm day. Upstairs, 10 silver coins sat in the strongbox. Cold too, probably. Same temperature as this ruined bearing. I set the old bearing on the workbench, metal on wood. It didn't make the sound I expected. No ring, no resonance. Just a dull thud. The wheel turned smooth. The stones ground clean. The system worked. I'd fixed one thing, broken another. The bearing and the coins would fit together perfectly in that strongbox. Same temperature, same weight, same purpose maybe, both wearing down slowly until they failed completely. That's what I told myself. Late at night, grinding grain in the darkness, I thought about the case. About Lawrence's compromise and Mortimer's hatred, and Cordelia's threats, and Fletcher's warning. The grease doesn't wash off. I'd taken Lawrence's money, found his truth, kept his secrets, let a criminal walk free because he had the right name. I told myself it wasn't my job to ensure justice, just to find truth. What people did with that truth wasn't my responsibility. The words fit smoothly now, like a lock clicking into place. No resistance, no friction. That should have worried me. It didn't. 30 silver coins had become 20 in the repair, then 10 remaining. Real money that had fixed a real problem. The mill ran better. Father was pleased, in his cold way. Practical good had come from moral compromise. Maybe that was just how the world worked, how the Burrows worked. Under all the manners and politeness and talk of law and justice, 2 systems running parallel. One for common folk, one for those with names and money. I'd learnt that lesson, learnt it well. The question was what I'd do with that knowledge. The flour dust hung in the lamplight, turning the air white. Each grain caught light, suspended, before falling. Individual pieces, countless, all moving the same direction. Like the mill turned, like the water flowed. Like I'd keep grinding grain, and solving problems, and taking money from whoever paid. I'd learned how the Burrows really worked. I wasn't sure I liked the lesson, but I'd learned it. And somewhere in Burrowtown, Mortimer Redhill sat in his comfortable home, unpunished. Still scheming about Bagwell Manor, still believing the rules didn't apply to him. He was right. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. But the mill wheel keeps turning, smooth now, efficient, perfect. And tomorrow, there will be more grain to grind. More Burrow folk with problems they need solved quietly, without official reports, without consequences for the right people. More mysteries where truth matters less than discretion, where silver matters more than justice. And learning how things work, the real rules, the ones nobody says out loud. I don't like them, but I'm starting to understand them. And maybe, late at night, feeling the weight of those remaining coins in the strongbox upstairs, listening to the smooth turn of a bearing bought with compromise. Maybe understanding is worse than ignorance. Maybe Fletcher was right. The grease doesn't wash off. It builds up, grain by grain, until you can't remember what clean hands felt like. I looked at my hands in the lamplight. Flour dust, mostly. Easy to wash. Mostly.
Thank you for listening to The Mystery of the Broken Lock part of Mysteries of the Burrows series, a Ted Stonewall mystery adventure. If you have enjoyed this, please make sure that you like and subscribe, and try the notification bell so you can notify the next time we post a new story. And the next one will be The Servant's Thief.